Right, I think we're live now, which is all good. So I'll quickly do the intro and then I'll pass on to Ryan. So yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to the March edition of the Agile Roundabout, and thank you for joining us this month. And I was just saying to Nora and Ryan just then that it's amazing to be doing this in wonderful sunlight for once, instead of having to switch on lights. So for this month's event, we're going to be focusing on the delivery function, and we've lined up two great speakers to help explore this particular topic. So to introduce them both, first we'll be hearing from Ryan, who's the CEO at 11FS, and then we'll be hearing from Nora, who's the lead delivery manager at BBC Sounds. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Jonathan, and I run and host the Agile Roundabout for a company called TRG, and we started these events in 2016. And we're delighted to have built the community that we have done. And we hope that you, the audience, continue to keep getting the benefits out of it. And this is the reason why we've started these events in the first place. So back to this evening, both speakers would love your participation and interaction. So feel free to ask any questions via the comment section, and just make sure that you're logged in. And then at the end of both talks, we'll bring both Ryan and Nora back to answer any questions that you have. And finally, if you are interested in continuing the conversation and joining our Agile community on Slack, then please feel free to do so. My colleague Beth will put the link in the comment section below. So right, enough of me gabbing. I'll pass it over to Ryan, who's going to be taking you through the modern day delivery function. Ryan, over to you.
Okay. Excellent. So, yes, the project manager has new clothes. So what's a delivery lead and why do we need them? So as Jonathan mentioned, I'm COO at 11FS. We're kind of a consultancy that build challenger propositions for financial services. I have 18 years experience in delivery management, and although my job title is COO, I'd say I'm more Chief Operating Officer than Chief Operations Officer. And I'm still quite heavily involved in advising clients and delivery work. I've been lucky enough to work with some big clients on some big transformation pieces: Barclays, Lloyds Banking Group, AstraZeneca, to name a few. And generally, my focus through my career has been digital products and service delivery, leading large multidisciplinary teams of up to 100 people. So that's a bit about me. So I think, for me, this started about 2 years ago, actually, or maybe 3 years ago now, just after I joined 11FS, and we're starting to build a delivery function and needed a delivery lead or a program manager, actually. And I put a job spec up there, and I got all manner of applications from like serious, hardcore, technical, TOGAF qualified kind of delivery people, right through to Scrum Masters. And I thought I'd nailed the job spec, but clearly I'd not. And when I thought about what I was looking for, I thought, actually, the world has moved on. There's been a lot of change over the past 5 years. And I think what was a delivery manager has kind of shifted. And that's what I really want to try and unpack a bit today. So, a quote from David Ogilvy: "Search all the parks in all your cities, and you'll find no statues of committees." And I think this is true just in life in general. Kind of every team, every organization, no matter what it is, needs a leader. We've got a prime minister who is nominally the leader of the country. Every business has a CEO, which is a leader. There's always kind of that one person who's accountable. I think, it's accountable for keeping people focused and aligned, especially in kind of what we do. Decision making, managing stakeholders, setting direction, motivating the team, managing risk, removing obstacles, solving problems. It's a collective responsibility to do that, but there's kind of one person accountable for driving it forward and making sure it happens. And I think with kind of software delivery and IT project management and digital transformation project management, or digital transformation program, should I say, unfortunately, kind of the person that has been traditionally that leader is kind of the project manager from the Dilbert cartoons, someone like this. And I think this is the common mental image when you ask people, especially an engineer probably, what a project manager is. Like, this common mental image is someone who's like waving around the Gantt chart. They're obsessed with spreadsheets. They're really stressed about the next steerco meeting. They're checkbox. They're by the book. They're command and control. They're not very flexible. That's kind of, I think, the image of project managers that's portrayed. I think these people traditionally have been more interested in following corporate governance and delivering the right business outcomes. And I've met a lot of these people in my life, and to be honest, many still exist, especially in large corporates. And they give us delivery folk a bad rep. But I think things have changed. Like I said, things have changed a lot over the past couple of years, and that I want to unpack, because I think that's really had a bearing on the role of kind of the project manager, which I think is more a delivery lead now than a project manager. So there's a change in landscape. So we've had product owners for a while, and I think especially with the rise of Scrum and Agile, but I think product owner role is kind of transitioning more to PM role. There's less of that focus on technical requirements and kind of functional requirements, and more of a focus on balancing desirability, viability, and feasibility, quite heavily weighted with desirability and customer centricity taking center stage. I think we've seen a big shift from specialist tools to accessible tools. Things such as Asana, Jira, Confluence, Office 365, they all facilitate better collaboration. And it's meant that there's been less of a centralized function for areas such as task management, reporting metrics for performance, keeping documentation up to date and versioned. These tools have kind of digitized and distributed some of those things that were traditional project management and project management office duties. The next thing is like the explosion of startups and the dominance of big tech businesses have seen a more widespread adoption of, agile or lean startup philosophies. And a big part of that philosophical change is seeing a shift to more experimentation, a bit more of a focus on learning, a bit more of a venture mindset from stakeholders, I'd say, as well. I think that overall that kind of shifts from this project or program-based mindset with a fixation on deliverables and outputs to more of a business value creation mindset with a focus on outcomes. Waterfall to Agile, I think those things I've just mentioned, and then I think especially combined with cloud architecture, DevOps, automated testing, CI/CD, have kind of all kind of which have enabled continual releases and rapid feedback cycles from end customers. I think all of these things together have been a real catalyst in creating more flexibility and better facilitating that shift to more agile working methods, more iterations, and I think a closer alignment between what was traditionally a split of business and IT. And then finally, I think the first wave of digital transformation saw a lot of companies digitize analog products, analog processes, but a lot of startups, a lot of big techs have been born digital, and they've kind of become the dominant players in the market. And I think they've really set the tone for what good looks like in technology, in culture, in operations. And that's seen an increasing shift in bigger, more traditional companies looking to transition away from legacy software, from legacy culture, legacy op model, and legacy delivery methodologies to become truly digital. So this hasn't happened overnight. It's kind of been a gradual shift over the past 5 years, I'd say. But I think if you sum it all up, what it's really enabled is this change from a compliant culture to a purposeful culture. And I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was the CIO or CTO of Marcus, which is built by Goldman Sachs, which has been quite successful. I think he said, if you give me a mediocre team but with real purpose, we can deliver absolute gold. If you give me an excellent team that are really constrained by being compliant to corporate governance, then the thing is dead before it started. And I think that has been a huge, huge shift in the past 5 years. And that really has led to a shift in no longer the project manager, but more the delivery lead. And for me, I think for organizations to be successful and achieve their goals through project delivery or continuous improvement, it's that rethink of the role. It's somebody more focused on the outcomes, the method, the team, and coaching the team than it is on ticking boxes and filling out forms. So how do we define the delivery lead? So for me, the delivery lead is a single person accountable for the successful delivery of a piece of work against agreed outcomes. I think what I've often observed, and the delivery lead doesn't necessarily need to be a project manager or from a project management background. I think that's quite an important distinction to make. For me, it's just the single accountable person on the project. I think what I've often observed is, like, regardless of job title or organization, there is one person who becomes that accountable delivery lead. They know the goals, how to get there, they drive things forward on a day-to-day basis, they make decisions, they solve problems, and ultimately they keep the team happy and motivated, and they keep the stakeholders happy by delivering. I think one of the really important things is that even though you can be from any background, kind of any tribe. It can be engineering, it can be design, it can be product, it could be data and analytics, it can be project management. I think the key crux to it is that they are able to balance the needs of all those different specialisms within a team, along with kind of the forces of the desirability, the viability, and the feasibility of what's being delivered. So I kind of break this down into a couple of facets. So I think you've got the project manager, and that's I think that's the governance and reporting, or the accountability element of the job. It covers the areas of traditional project management. It's the tracking and the reporting metrics. You're on budget, you're on schedule, is the quality to plan. It's the configuration management, it's the status reporting, it's the risk and issue management, and it's ensuring that there's governance wrapped around that and that everybody's clear on the kind of the terms of reference. I think the other part to it is a Scrum Master, which is very much focused on the ways of working, the cadence, and really empowering the team and giving them autonomy. I think you need to create that environment for highly skilled people to collaborate and thrive. I think there's getting the balance between that and getting the balance between these two parts, the project manager part and the Scrum Master part, is crucial to success. And it's probably one of the most difficult aspects of a delivery lead's role, is balancing the autonomy and the accountability in the team. I think if you lean too far on the project management and accountability side, you kind of end up with teams that are stifled and unmotivated. But if you lean too far on the autonomy side, you end up with like this amazing quality product or service, but it's kind of never delivered and it's constantly being polished. So yeah, I think the Scrum Master part represents the servant leader aspect of the job. For me, it's about clearly defining goals, the delivery cadence, such as kind of quarterly goals, quarterly OKRs, and 6-week cycles, the touch points, your stand-ups, your retros, your demos. It's really about combining those things to optimize and continually improve the method and the ways of working in the process. And it's also about nurturing the team's culture to enable them to work in that autonomous fashion towards a common goal, and most importantly, I think, at a sustainable pace. And then I'd say kind of the final facet of a delivery lead, or a modern day delivery lead, is what I would call the product manager, which represents, I guess, more of the strategic thinking. So as a delivery lead, I believe you really do need to have a deep understanding of what is being made and kind of what the vision and the target state is. You really need to know what the customer needs are. You need to know how what you're making is generating value for the business. And you really need to be across kind of the technological and operational considerations or constraints, as well as kind of the project constraints. I think only by knowing those intimately can the delivery lead really effectively support the teams and support the stakeholders to make those day-to-day decisions and the trade-off calls. And then I think the wrapper around all of this is emotional intelligence. you need somebody with a really good deal of EQ who can understand different viewpoints, mediate, negotiate, motivate, and empower. You need to be a really good communicator with good interpersonal skills and a high degree of empathy to be kind of the modern day delivery lead. But I think you also need to not be afraid of making decisions and sticking to them. So for me, that kind of encapsulates everything that I believe is needed and is in a modern day delivery lead. And I think when I went back to it and went back to that job spec I wrote, I was like, it didn't have any of this in it. And since then, we've had a delivery framework at the organization and these principles, and this is kind of what we hire for. Train delivery. This I think in terms of from I think it's applicable to every organisation. There is there's always a delivery lead that can't person. Content is absolutely key. And I think probably before we drive, like, do whether you like dedicated each and I just but say this isn't what needs to be delivered is very important. Larger before you kind of you've got to check some organs still quite sorry, not considerate. Some organizations still haven't kind of that purpose driven, corporate governance type. So I think is the option is it outcome driven or is it more timing cost and annual budget cycles? I think that's really important. I think project or program, like, is it the next piece of scope or is it always newest product developed as you? I think time sensitivity is a real kind of where you lean on those the delivery. That was, I mean, yes, the more did and the organizations large products.
Hi Ryan, can you hear me? Okay. You seem to be your internet signal seems to be dropping in and out, unfortunately. I think we might seem to have lost Ryan. Unfortunately. Oh, are you there, Ryan? Can you hear me? Okay. I think. Can you hear me? Okay, now, Ryan. Are you there?
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there just seems to be unfortunately a problem with your internet. Keeps going in and out, unfortunately. What we might have to do is we might you finished anyway, Ryan. Is that right?
Yeah. When?
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then we'll bring in Nora, who's going to take us through the next part of the delivery function. So yeah, Nora, hopefully you can hear me and we're all good to go.
Yeah, I was worried it's my internet for a bit. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Great. Lovely. Am I good to go?
Yes, all good to go.
Can you see my slides?
No, unfortunately, apparently your slides have disappeared.
Oh, okay. I did drop out for a second, so that could have been that. Just bear with me a second. There you go.
Perfect. Good to go.
Lovely. So hi, everyone. As it was mentioned, my name is Nora. I'm the lead Agile Delivery Manager of BBC Sounds. Thank you for spending your Thursday evening with me. I will try to make it worthwhile. I will be honest, I had to change my slides last minute. As you can probably see from the summary, I was going to talk about a case study around aligning teams together. But when I saw that the title is The Point of Delivery, I did some last minute jigging, so it's more representative of that title. So what I will talk about is an overview of the business areas that the delivery function can help you with, and making it work better, and where can delivery make a difference. And then I will walk through a quick example, a case study if you like, if you really is to really bring that message home and show what the point of delivery really is. So this is me. If you had a look at LinkedIn, this is what I look like there. And actually, I managed to make myself look quite similar to that picture. I'm the lead of the delivery team in Sounds, leading 6 amazing embedded delivery managers. But as you will see from the talk later, I'm all about creating and implementing delivery structures that helps teams align against overarching strategic objectives in fast-changing agile environments. And this is what I look like now that we work from home. That's my fabulous assistant, Pasha, who might make an appearance later if it gets nearer to dinner time. Okay, so let's talk about my context. So BBC Sounds is a live and on-demand audio service from the BBC. They include live radio, audio, and on-demand content, both music and podcast. As you can see, we've got quite a large audience. We serve 3.8 million users per week who spend 12.1 million hours with us every 7 days. It has a relatively complex delivery landscape. So we have 8-ish cross-functional teams. And the reason I'm saying 8-ish is because we're going through some ambitious team growth strategy. So this number is expected to grow. We serve 5 platforms, web, connected TVs, iOS and Android phones, and smart speakers. We work across 3 locations when we're allowed to go to the office. So we are split between London, Manchester, and Glasgow. And we have a API-first strategy, which, as you will see later, includes some dependencies and throws up some problems that I will talk about later. Okay, the role of delivery. As we are talking about the whole what's the point of delivery angle, I will start by describing how I see the role of delivery and what the delivery team in Sounds specifically working towards. So in my opinion, there are 3 different levels the delivery function needs to work across in order to be successful. First, there is the strategic business level. This is where we work on turning the different business strategies into a clear delivery focus and a coherent narrative for the team. Then we've got the product or department level, depending on the size of the business. And this level, we have orchestrating the efforts of all the different disciplines and all the different teams in order to deliver on that strategic focus effectively. And this is where we think about, in generally how we can organize ourselves to deliver successfully across the piece. And finally, the team level, which is our bread and butter, we actively and continuously working embedded in the teams to create and maintain effective and high-performing agile teams. What does that mean in a little bit more detail? So on a strategic level, well, I think it's okay to say that most large organizations have a complex landscape when it comes to strategy setting. So you've got different business ambitions across the business on multiple levels, multiple horizons, vertical business units, horizontal business units, and even different disciplines and functions. So this is where, as delivery managers, we work in making sense of this really complex landscape and help turning these different strategies into something specific, like a specific deliverable outcome. So delivery is responsible for building the lightweight processes that support teams in creating objectives that ladder up to these overarching strategies. So this is where we would ask questions like, how can we turn all the different strategies into a clear focus and a narrative that we can cascade down? What language and tools we can use to help teams see how their everyday working fits in the bigger picture and the BBC's overall success, and what metrics do we need to implement to understand if we're making progress towards those strategic ambitions. On a product or department level, the delivery managers are responsible to organize the chaos that can sometimes occur when teams have to work together. And this is what I will talk about a bit more detail, so we keep this slide short. But the questions here to look into is, how should we organize ourselves to get the most of our collective efforts across the product? How can we work better collectively to deliver value faster to our users? And how we can shorten feedback loops and avoid rework. And finally, team level. Delivery managers and delivery is all about helping teams to be effective. So we look after the delivery mechanics, managing the delivery processes and ensuring that there is an iterative plan that the team is working towards with tight feedback loops. And we maintain the delivery momentum and manage blockers, risks and impediments. We look after the team dynamics. So we take the lead on establishing healthy team dynamics and routines and making sure that the team is working well and the team members are happy. So this is all where the people stuff comes into place. And finally, lead and agile practices. So coaching the team on the different lean and agile techniques and help them apply them as needed. And creating the environment where continuous improvements and introspection can really happen, including measuring success, inspecting and adapting. So as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the product and department level challenges. And I will bring in the case study that I originally prepared. So this is about how we can improve cross-team delivery in BBC Sounds. If you remember, we've got that complex delivery landscape. So how delivery helped the department navigate that. Early last year, so around December, very early January, we started to observe that team members are unhappy and we started to collect feedback. So we got feedback like, back then we worked with OKRs and in a quarterly cadence. We received feedback that the OKRs and the tactics that the teams come up with not aligned with other teams' OKRs or tactics that they're dependent on. That once dependencies have been identified, teams have to shelve that work because it takes more than a quarter to drive that work through other teams. And some teams were very keen and clearly requesting that their developers and test team members be involved in other teams' requirements and shaping pieces so they can mitigate any feasibility risks. So as when we looked at it as a delivery team, we do what we do best. We looked at some metrics. This is one particular feature that had to be working across 3 teams in order it to be completed. On the left-hand side, you can see the overall time it took across the Sounds product to complete that initiative. And on the right-hand side, you can see how long the individual teams spent within that time. So the left-hand side shows from day 1 till we are now done. Sounds, the product is this feature is done across the product. And on the right-hand side, you can see the individual team cycle times and discovery. So what you can see that there's a complete misalignment. Some teams don't spend time in discovery at all. They just, I don't know, they probably get the scope from the other teams. But also, once when we look at this, one would expect that we can turn this around on the 90 days. So what happened in the additional almost 60 days, what that time was spent on. So when we looked at this project, we tried to tease it apart and we looked at how it played out. And what happened is that the priorities within the teams were not aligned, and the work was really scattered around the quarter. So even though we had the intent to deliver it within the quarter, within the teams, the individual teams set different cadence and different, different sequence for their work. So it resulted in this sort of waterfall-like approach where we are not done until the last team is done. So we're flowing through this Gantt chart when we're waiting for some other teams to finish, which, as you can see, creates really long cycle times. But if it's not enough, let's see what happens if something doesn't go according to plan. And let's face it, never anything does. Let's see what happens if this team finds that the current scope and technical approach just doesn't work for them, or they find a better way of doing it, or a competitor came out with a similar approach, or we get user feedback from a guerrilla testing that actually the current proposition doesn't quite work out. What are our options? So we can go back, start from beginning, go back to team 1, ask them to change it. We can cut corners, compromise, which very likely introduces some technical debt, or we can abandon the project, which, let's face it, rarely happens. And most likely we will decide to rushing through, change the scope, rework. We will spend some time moaning about it, trying to blame someone for our wasted efforts, and just really, really hope that we never have to work across teams ever again. The problem with that is that most big ticket items or most big ambitious changes that will make a difference need more than one team's contribution. So last January, the delivery team got together when we could still get together in person, and we decided to change this. So we set a target for ourselves to resolve this issue. First, we asked the question, what if what we need is not better project management and better planning and more detailed scope up front, but a complete rethink of the approach and attitude towards working across teams? What if we need to move away from talking about cross-team dependencies and dependency mapping, and what if we start talking about cross-team collaboration instead? This would allow us not just to reduce the cycle time, as you can see on the bottom, but also if something goes wrong or the market changes, we can very quickly react and change our approach across the teams working together without completely reworking or wasting effort. What did we do once we discovered that this is probably a good way about it? We changed how we operate, and we decided to invest more time in supporting cross-team working. In Sounds now, in BBC Sounds, each cross-team initiative, which is a piece of work that needs multiple teams to work towards in order to be successful, is supported by a cross-discipline group that includes product engineering, delivery, and UX. In other words, a quad. The quad ensures that teams work together towards shared goals. So their role is all about help communication and coordination across our teams, gather the different perspectives of different platforms, different technologies and functionalities and services, and create a shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve together, what we're trying to do, and work with these different teams to align them and define a technical approach that works for us all and ensure efficient decision making in the process. The second thing we implemented is a delivery lifecycle for shared initiatives, which is another word of saying cross-team initiatives. So initiatives that are shared by multiple teams. We introduced a ways of working to support effective delivery and alignment. This is especially important because for teams to work together well, they need to have shared expectations on what to expect from each other, what's going to happen, and a shared language so we can communicate effectively, and a shared set of routines so we can reduce the coordinational costs. So when it comes to cross-team working, we start with setting up a quad, as I mentioned, overseeing the cross-team efforts and ensuring alignment. Then we do a collaborative exploration where we validate that this idea is indeed worth investing effort into. Then we do a cross-team kickoff. This is a forum and everyone who needs to be involved gets together and agree on what we're trying to achieve, why, and how we will get there. Then we do cross-team discovery, which is a collaborative effort across disciplines and across the involved teams on designing the steps that it will make it a reality. And then we do a breakdown of the intention into distinctive units of work and thin slices, which is especially important when multiple teams need to work together so we can maintain quick feedback loops and avoid bloated scope. And then, of course, we build it, release it, and measure it as you'd expect. And the quad is responsible for ensuring that this feedback loop is then closed. The third thing that we introduced is visual roadmaps. So for the teams to help with their planning efforts and communicate their intent, now we use a Miro tool that looks like this, that helps teams align, not just across teams, but across departments and across disciplines if needed to be. And it visualizes each team's contribution to our shared initiatives and goals. So it's a really powerful visual communication tool, internally to the team, but also externally to other teams and stakeholders. It also helps us having better conversations around topics like too much work in progress. Do we need all these tracks? Can we swarm on something? Can we focus better? Misalignment, where can we align to work better together? And seeing the impact on any priority changes that we want to introduce. We also catch up around this quite regularly. Sorry, I should have clicked. To discuss the cross-team alignment in a fortnightly review. What's the outcome of this? What did we achieve with introducing these changes? These graphs are similar to the one that I showed before from 2019. They are two separate pieces of work. One is introducing a cross-platform experimentation capability, and the other one is a new set of pages allowing users to browse categories. You can see that we've got quite a long lead time. Some teams are not involved in discovery, but also because of the lead time is so much longer than how much time individual teams spent on it, and we can most likely guess that there is a significant misalignment in individual team priorities when it comes to the quarter. When we look at last year, so 2020, it paints a slightly different picture. There's a lot of context here that I will not have time to get into, but a few points to highlight. So on the left-hand side, there are some monolithic pieces of work. We only have one iteration, scope, build, delivery. While on the on the right-hand side, both the information architecture renewal piece and the single item promo included 2, 3 or more iterations. So we introduced an iterative plan to work towards. And then you can see that all teams are involved in discovery. So there is an alignment between teams and a clear move away from thinking about dependencies. Someone will discover it and we just implement it, to thinking about collaborative working. This was made possible by achieving clarity on the priorities. So what is the sequencing within the quarter, and enabling teams to really focus on what's important. So once we've got that focus, we helped exposing discovery and actually do it together with teams involved and with the right people there, rather than making it happen somewhere else in a black box. So these are screenshots from the different workshops that myself or the delivery managers led. We gave UX and product the tools to break down the work better and build propositions working together with other disciplines. We introduced better kickoffs to ensure everyone is starting from the same space and people are working together to create the solution that works best for all. And we helped making decisions more effectively together while considering multiple perspectives. But the most important outcome, I think, for us was confident cross-team working. So, as I said, big ticket items tend to involve multiple teams. With these improvements, we managed to get to a place when working across team is now okay. You can see the number of cross-team initiatives in Sounds in 2019 and 2020. You can see that the number is increasing, and since we launched on connected TVs and smart speakers, with these new ways of thinking about working together, we could scale up to even 5 teams in the year. Okay, so as I said, the main change for us is that we are less hesitant on taking on these big challenges, and we can take those bolder steps more regularly. This is where I will give a special shout out for the delivery team, as we achieved all of this while working fully remote. So I said we set this goal in January, and then we were forced to stay at home from March. But even then, during this period, we launched Sounds International. So this is now makes Sounds being used worldwide. The hero promo for big events and special content on all platforms. We have started to rethink our information architecture, and now we've got a new music space and hub within the product. And we also have a new brand extension on Radio 1 called Radio 1 Dance that you can listen to in all platforms, including now smart speakers. So a quick summary, just to tie it all together. In my opinion, the delivery function needs to operate on 3 levels. We work turning the different strategies to a coherent and clear focus, so we avoid pulling our teams into different directions. And we can help people understand why what they're working on is important. On a product and department level, we help orchestrating the efforts of all the different disciplines and teams so we can deliver on that strategic focus effectively. And finally, our bread and butter is building high-performing agile teams and deliver value iteratively and predictably. And as you would expect, all these levels are interlinked, and we have to move fluidly across them to optimize the system as a whole, and to help all levels of the business and the organization working in a more agile way. Some tools that we use for success: shared language facilitated by the quads, and the workflow, the shared workflow. So we've got the shared language, shared routines, and shared expectations. Visual roadmaps to help us have better conversations around alignment and outcomes and intentions. And finally, focusing on the flow of work. So by getting delivery involved from idea to deployment, we could enable better discovery that involves the right people and the right time, and really managing the pipeline of work through, so we always have the highest value item delivered first. And that was me.
Thank you very much, Nora. And I just want to say your living room office is getting a bit of love in the comments as well. Yeah, and it's good to also have you back as well, Ryan. Hopefully you can hear us loud and clear now. So yeah, I just thought it'd be good before we open up with some questions for you both. I was just wanting to open the floor up to you both and ask if each of you had a question on each other's talk. So we'll start off with Nora's talk, given it's the freshest. So Ryan, do you have anything you'd like to ask Nora in regards to her talk?
No, I thought it was quite fascinating. I like the three layers approach, and the dependencies between teams is something that always comes up, and it's always been a struggle. And I really like the approach that you use to kind of remove the blockers. And get everyone kind of working together and pulling in the same direction, and kind of flatten that, flatten the delivery cadence.
And Nora, do you have anything you'd like to ask Ryan, stemming from his talk?
I thought what was really interesting is that the slight contrast between the two. Like, I talked a lot about collaboration and working together. I really liked the accountability angle on delivery. We quite frequently shy away from that. We talk a lot about facilitation, and we purposefully not say that we lead or we are accountable for the success of delivery. We are very a facilitative role, I think. So it's quite interesting to see someone say it out loud so boldly, if you like, that actually we do have that responsibility and accountability. You don't hear that very often.
So we'll take some questions from the comments, and given that I recruit product, it's always a question that I always find interesting. So Atia asks, do you think we still have a distinction between product managers and owners? And she gives what she perceives her difference. PM's more strategy and vision, whereas PO's more day-to-day operation and not focused on strategy. So just be good to hear from both of you if you agree with that distinction or if you disagree. So we'll go with Ryan first.
Yeah, I think I touched on it. I think traditionally product owners, especially in software delivery, have been very much focused on kind of the tech and the technical and functional requirements and delivery of those requirements or stories. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I think the product manager role is a bit more holistic, and it's constantly it's a bit more customer focused, and I think it is the balancing the desirability, the viability, the feasibility, and it is a bit more strategic. I think the weighting is on the desirability part of that. I think that's the distinction. I think maybe there's different levels of seniority, right, in product managers. I think maybe the more junior you are as a product manager is possibly what was more of a traditional product owner role, because it's kind of focused a bit on grooming the backlog, focused on the requirements and what's coming in the next sprint or two. And I think it was more a business stakeholder that would take that more strategic, holistic view. So they're in that scenario. The kind of the product manager is combining the business and IT, if you take a traditional sense, roles together.
And Nora, do you have anything to add to that, or do you agree on the sentiments that Ryan is echoing there?
I'm not really familiar with that distinction or difference. Okay. In my background, in my experience, regardless of what you're called, product owner, product manager, I would expect that person to look at a strategic view of product. They're responsible for the product success. That for me means there is a strategic layer of that thinking. But I understand that in other companies, they might have a different differentiation or roles for different people. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, and speaking to multiple companies and dealing with product day-to-day, it's quite interesting to see how certain companies perceive product ownership versus product managers. And yeah, it's very interesting to see how one company is very different in terms of how they perceive product owner to another. So Phil asks question. So Scrum purists might say you can't focus on getting the best out of teams if you have delivery responsibilities too. Where does a modern day Scrum Master fit in your opinion? So we'll go with Nora first on this one.
Good question. It depends. How I see the delivery function is creating suitable processes and routines for the team. That means, in my book, that you look at the different methodologies and you choose the techniques and tools that fit for the team and for their environment and their challenges. We in Sounds or anywhere where I have a chance to make a difference, we don't apply a methodology. We work with Scrum, Benilini, Scrum Wolof stuff that works for us. That the bigger the challenge is and the more complex the landscape is, the more likely you need to use different tools and techniques to make sense of that. So for that reason, we don't talk about Scrum Masters, we talk about delivery managers who will use element of Scrum, they will use the element of Kanban, they will use an element of the SDM on extreme programming, and they will create the processes and ways of working and culture of the team based on what's the most suitable, I guess.
And Ryan, do you have anything you'd like to add from Nora?
Yeah, I think it depends on. I think this is where my internet died. I think there's a couple of variables, and I think definitely kind of complexity and scale is one. But I think even though you have like what I said is the modern day delivery lead, I think sometimes those roles can be split. That you still, I think, on a lot of teams you tend to have the product manager being accountable. And the three areas that I outlined, those responsibilities can be split between the Scrum Master, the engineering lead, the product manager, so a PMO office. So I think, yes, I think that I'd agree with Scrum purists that if you've got the delivery responsibility, it is difficult. It is difficult to get the most out of the team because you're constantly, like I said, trying to balance that accountability and autonomy. But I think like where it works really well, and I think Nora mentioned this as well, is about that aligned expectations of who is accountable for what and who is responsible for what at the start of the project. And if you want the Scrum Master to purely be responsible for helping, like creating the best working environment for the team and helping the team fulfill their potential and unleash their potential, then yeah, I think I think the product manager needs to then take on the delivery accountability.
And we'll just end with a few more questions. So I think these are based more on Nora's talk. So Orin asks, does all the discovery/solution planning for an initiative happen up front or procedurally based on slices/milestones?
That's a really good question. depends. It's based on slices, but because of the complexity, we would have some pencil sketch idea of later slices as well. What we're trying to do is to have a set of user stories, for example, or a set of user journeys with some wireframes. So we have something to talk to when it comes to later slices. But the discovery is slice based, and I would have loved to represent that on the graphs, but we moved away from that particular view, so I had to recreate them last night with the new ways of working. But the question is really good. We really have struggled in the past with the bloated scope, trying to get all the details right in the past, partially because of all the teams and platforms. Currently, what we're really trying to get right is how to have lightweight discovery processes that allows enough information for teams to plan their work around it, but it doesn't limit us, and we can maintain optionality, I guess, in the process. I mean, it allows us to learn and iterate based on feedback.
Cool. And very last question for this evening. I think this is more aimed at you and your talk, Nora. So how are the quads defined? Do you have separate focuses, e.g. by initiative or product or epic, and how many people are in each?
Yes. Quads, each initiative have a quad. And now we have quads in multiple levels because it turned out to work really, really well. So each initiative, if it's a cross-team initiative, would have 4 representatives, sometimes 5. If there's significant architectural changes, for example, we would pull in an architect. If the testing shows up complexities, we would pull in a tester. So it's not always full, but the original idea was to have a delivery manager, a product owner, a UX designer, and an engineering rep who can then go out to the different teams, have the conversations with the right people, and pull it back together. We really don't want to have this sort of deciding everything with like a committee and heavy meetings with 100,000 people. So these quads were set up to go to the different teams, have those conversations with the right people, and pull the information and understanding back together. So we've got different perspective, and it allows us to make the right decision. So there would be different people for the different initiatives to make sure that we've got the right people involved. But we now also have quads for the epic level within the teams where it's appropriate, where the teams seem to like the ideas. So sometimes within the team, they would nominate that 4 people who looks after that particular epic. So we would have a engineer who represents a particular epic. Is not always the most senior engineers being overloaded with all the different questions.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank both Ryan and Nora for giving up the time this evening to instill their take on the delivery function, and hopefully it's added value to the audience. And this is what these technical talks or agile talks are all about. So I'd like to say a big thank you to you both for giving up your time and talking to our community. And I'd also like to thank the audience as well for taking time to join us this evening. We'll be back again in April. I think it's the 29th. So from myself, from Nora and from Ryan, we hope you have a good evening. And as Beth has mentioned, if you can join us on Slack, that'd be great, and we'd love to continue the conversation over there. So thank you very much, guys, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.